Hi, I'm Conor Cotton. I am the Managing Director of Not Going to Uni, and today we're going to be finding out more about one of our amazing apprentice ambassadors, Alika. We're going to be finding out more about her apprenticeship and her journey to get to where she is today. This is the time. So Alika, tell us a little bit more about who you are, where you've come from, and the current pathway you're on.
So I am a level 7 solicitor apprentice and I work at Lee Day. After I finished my A-levels, I worked for a while and then I done one apprenticeship. So that was a business admin level 3 at another law firm. And then I left to do other work. So that was still in law, but not quite the same.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I went to university and then I dropped out of uni and now I'm doing a solicitor apprenticeship.
Some journey.
Yeah.
So when you went down the initial apprenticeship route of business admin, did you know you always wanted to go down the legal route in terms of becoming a solicitor, or were you unsure?
I think I was choosing between whether or not to be a barrister or a solicitor, but law was always on the cards.
Yeah.
I think I had decided that I wanted to do a solicitor apprenticeship when it was made clear to me whilst I was doing that first apprenticeship. So it didn't exist before I started that one.
Okay.
And then after I found out it was a real thing,
Yeah.
I was applying every week.
Yeah, no, I think they're so sought after now as well,
Yeah,
aren't
they are very competitive.
So you said you went to university as well in between. So was that because you thought that was the pathway you were going to have to take to become a solicitor, or?
I went to uni because I'd taken like a 2-year gap year at this point, and
Okay.
I was like, I should probably get started into going into law. So yeah, I just decided to go. I decided to go the traditional route because they were so competitive. I wasn't able to get one like immediately. So I went to university and I was working at the same time in an immigration law firm.
Okay.
So it was working and studying at the same time anyway. And
Yeah.
so since I'd finished my A-levels, that's all I've been doing. It made sense that if I was able to get a sister apprenticeship, I should do it.
Yeah. So going back to school, so what were you like in school, and what subjects did you take as well at A-levels, things like this?
Yeah, I think school was very interesting. I didn't really care about education up until maybe the year we started our GCSEs, and I was like, okay, I actually need to be a serious candidate.
It gets serious.
Yeah. And then afterwards, I went to college, and I think that's when everything solidified.
Yeah.
So I studied French, philosophy, classical civilization, and English literature.
Heavy subjects.
Yeah, they were very intense.
That makes my BTEC sport I did like really.
Sport is really hard though. Sport is really hard. Listen, that GCSE, I done GCSEP and it was super difficult. So then afterwards, I just appreciated the fact that this learning style is really not for me.
Yeah.
So that's when I was thinking about alternative ways that I study generally, and then I guess moving into the first apprenticeship, I was just like, clearly, how the traditional method works does not work for me.
Yeah. So when you went down the apprenticeship route, you went straight in 18, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you go about finding your apprenticeship? Because there'll be obviously people watching this who will be similar age, might be in college already, or even at 16 going to college. How did you go about actually discovering, finding the apprenticeship, and taking that step?
So I Googled like legal work experience, and then one of the options was to do an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So that's when I learned more about what an apprenticeship actually was. And then I actually went onto Not Going to Uni's website.
Yeah, shameless plug.
So that's where I like started to find out a lot more information about what it is, what it looks like, etc., etc. And then from there I was just scouring the web for apprenticeships that were short, because I knew that I still wanted to get a degree and I still wanted to become a lawyer. You need a degree to become one. So it was the route that I was going to take, but it was just how I was going to get to that final destination. So
because you sound like you were quite self-aware
of
which is not unheard of, but at that age to be that self-aware, to know this is what I need to do. How do you think you were so self-aware, and what's your advice for young people to be that? Because you sound like you were quite proactive, you were thinking ahead, you were really planning. I mean, even knowing about the short-term apprenticeship, which a lot of people wouldn't know about.
Yeah. I think it's because whenever I was interested in law, a lot of people always used to say like, oh my gosh, it's super hard, or like, especially because like I am a black female, everyone was very discouraging in the
Yeah.
sense of it would be very hard for you to succeed in that industry. So I was like, if you're telling me this at like, how old was I? Maybe between 11 and
Wow.
15. I need to start now.
Yeah.
So then that's why I was like, okay, cool. If I'm going to be serious about this, I need to start taking steps in order to make sure that I will get to the top.
Do you think that motivated you, the fact that people were sort of saying, oh, actually, you know, because, like you said, because of your race, because of this, because of that, you might not be able to make it in that industry?
I was very discouraged at first because I think when one person said it, I was like, okay, that's fine, like that's you. But when you continue to hear that same opinion over and over again, I was like, no, you're all liars. It's not true.
Do you think the tide's turning? Like, do you think that's changing? I mean, you're working in a law firm. Do you think that stereotypical white male and things like this in law is changing?
I think in the solicitors arena, I think companies are starting to take a more like open view in terms of how they recruit people, the areas that they're looking at, the techniques that they use, etc.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely a lot of work to be done because I think the problem is, I've done so much research on this topic.
Yeah.
The problem is that once you get into these large companies, especially in law, a lot of people who look or sound like me, etc., they don't think that it's an environment where you can grow and stay and develop. Sometimes it's very hostile, which is why I think there is work to be done. But getting into the profession, I think it's changing in a good way.
Yeah, slowly but surely. So looking ahead to where you are now, and obviously you're on that sort of final stage of that qualification pathway and things like that. How long have you got left?
Oh, like maybe 4 years.
Yeah, it's a long program.
Yeah.
So some people, because we've got quite a few solicitor ambassadors, said that often people are discouraged by the length of time. How have you found that length of time of education you've had to go through with it and actually juggling what is quite a heavy education to, you know, become a solicitor? How have you found juggling that and work and everything in between?
I think the first thing to remember is the time will pass anyway.
Yeah.
If you do go by the traditional route, the fact of the matter is you may never find someone who will take you on as a trainee and that will allow you to qualify as a solicitor that way.
Yeah.
I have met multiple people who have been trainees or trying to become a paralegal even for 10 years, 5 years, or go into a role promised that they could qualify and they don't.
Yeah.
So I think it's just picking which route you want to take. It's going to be long anyway. I kind of compare it to becoming a doctor.
Yeah.
Either path, you can, there's only one route to becoming a doctor, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, there's apprenticeships opening up in that.
Slowly
excited.
changing.
But the time will pass anyway. It's going to be super hard, whichever route you take. The normal traditional route is extremely hard, and I think the sister apprenticeship route, in my opinion, is harder because there's a lot more going on at once over a much longer period of time. Whereas when you go down the traditional route, it's like you're focusing on one thing at a time, but you're missing out on like extremely valuable experience that you cannot get unless you're doing a sister apprenticeship. So
100%.
I'd say go for it.
Yeah. So you're obviously very self-aware, like we've said. So looking ahead to the future, have you got sort of medium to long-term goals that you've got set and ones that you're happy to share about where you want to get to now?
Yeah, I can't answer that question truthfully.
That's fine. That's a good thing because and something I think because of the nature of what's out there now, there's always that proactive like, oh, you've got to know this, you've got to know that. But is there an element with you of also just learning and finding out as you go as well?
Yeah, I think even when I started this solicitor apprenticeship, some part of me still wanted to become a barrister. Yeah. Which is a whole other journey by itself.
Yeah.
And
could you do that via the route you've taken now? Could you, in theory, get to the end of this pathway? And
you could. You definitely could. And it's 100 times more competitive to qualify as a barrister than it is a solicitor. But I mean, obviously, having the experience is 1,000 times more helpful. Yeah. When I was thinking about going into law, the ultimate goal is to become a partner. So everyone's like, you know, when you go in, like you can end on like, I don't know, 200, 300K. I don't know how much partners earn.
A lot.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. So that's like the ultimate goal. Yeah. But I've observed partners,
Yeah.
and it's hard labor.
Yeah.
And I'm not against hard labor. I'm obsessed with law. But when you're a partner, there's very different things that you have to consider. So it's people management, it's managing your team, making sure that you're hitting your billing targets, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Whereas as a solicitor or a paralegal, you're focusing on making sure that you hit your time recording. It's a lot less pressure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I want to become a partner. Maybe I will. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I think if I was going to become one, it would have to be a managing partner,
Yeah.
which is hard labor as well. But yeah, it's interesting.
So then, becoming Not Going to Uni ambassador, and obviously you run a social page as well, a little bit about your career. Was the reason being, what was the reason for you to actually do that, to become an ambassador, to start sharing your journey more?
The lack of transparency, especially in law, is something that people, and myself as well, I found it very discouraging because it's a very closed off career.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to so many people who would, in my opinion, succeed and exceed their expectations when going into law, but because they don't know people or they don't understand the profession or they don't have the network, people are very discouraged from going into it.
Yeah.
So I think being able to be a part of an amazing company such as Not Going to Uni, and as well being able to share my own journey through this, it allows accessibility to just go through the roof. And I think social media has definitely helped.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's good because more role models, the better at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So to round up, so if someone's watching this and based on your career to date, which has had obviously highs and lows and, you know, going into university, coming out of university, because we may have even people watching this who are at uni and are considering dropping out. What's your one bit of advice for someone based on what you've learned so far?
Number one, if you are in university, it's not too late.
Yeah.
Even if you're in your second year, I've met multiple people who have dropped out of uni in their second year and started a degree apprenticeship as well. And if you're much early on in your career or you're just in a whole new industry entirely, please, please, please do like at least 1 year in industry. I would highly recommend doing 1 year in any industry you're interested in, because if you might think that the industry is one way, and then when you get into it, it is completely different. So it's hard to tie yourself down to a 7-year program. And 1 year in, you might hate it. So yeah,
that is like it's extended work experience, really.
Yeah,
For you.
yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting to us.
you.
If anyone wants to find out more about following your journey, what's your social handle?
Apprentice. So it's apprentice ISH. So apprentice-ish.
Amazing, and we'll flash it up on the screen. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to find out more about our other ambassadors, check out our YouTube channel to watch the other interviews, or go onto the Not Going to Uni website, www.notgoingtouni.co.uk.